no proof is not enough.
Welcome guys, welcome to this video. So in the last video we created we are loading the data when we scroll. So when the scroller touches the bottom, it loads the data automatically. So this is currently not fetching data from the database, it's just generating it through a loop. So what I want to do in this video is I want to use Vue.js and Laravel, and we are going to fetch data just like this, but it is going to be from the database. So you will be getting it from the database using controller, and you will be displaying data here. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So if I go to the code, and if you haven't seen the previous video where we worked on this one, I advise you to check that one. The video link is in the description. Now here in the code editor, I have the web.php where we have a route setup, and it is directing to welcome.blade. And if I go to welcome.blade, we have the scroll component, which is a Vue.js component in this case. Now if I go to the resources JS, there we have the components, all the components from Vue.js that we created. So here is the scroll one that we are using here. So if I go inside this component, here is the code for it. So what we are going to do, I'm going to create a brand new file. So here, instead of welcome.blade, I'm going to create another file. I'm going to call it home.blade. Alright, so we're going to create it totally separately, so you can, even I will leave this code in the description so you can download and use it. So here in the home.blade, I'm going to use the same layout file. So we have the layout file under layouts and apps. So if I go under resources, views, layouts, we have app.blade. Now we are not doing much here, we just have the bootstrap calling up on the top. Then we have our style yield here and the content yield here, and then the app.js. Now this app.js is actually this particular file. If I open this file, you will see we have a Vue.js instance here. Now we have two components currently, we're going to create another one as well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into welcome.blade, and I'm going to copy all of this and I'm going to paste in home.blade. Now I'm going to remove this component because we are going to create a brand new component for this video. So what I do, I go inside component, and here I call component scroll load .vue. So this is the file we are going to load. Now whenever you create a component in Vue.js, you need to register it inside app.js. So here in app.js we already registered two, so just the same way we need to register one more. So I'm going to call this one scroll load. Now we just slash here scroll load.vue. Alright, now we included it here, that's why we can call it straight away in our blade file now. So if I go to home.blade, we simply call it like this, but the proper syntax will be scroll dash load. So this is how you call it, a component. Now currently we do not have anything on our components, empty, so let's add something. So I say template. So this is how you add template inside a component. So basically we are going to have a single div inside it, and inside this div we can have multiple HTML tags, but outside of this div under template we only can have a single div. So here inside I'm going to just gonna h1 for now, new scroll component, just to see if it is working or not. So I see here script, and yeah, we need to export default because we can give it a name as well to this component, and I'm going to give it a name of the name that we are calling it with. So the scroll load, so I'm just going to copy it from here and here I'm gonna paste there. All right, now we need to define data, and data returns an object. Currently it's going to be empty. We will be doing it in a moment. So what we do now, we have home here set up and welcome set up here. So instead of welcome, I'm going to call home. So what happens is this is going to load, this is going to change the view. Now I'm going to refresh. Now we get new scroll component. So if I go to the code editor, so we simply said, okay, the new view file is home file. Go in there, home file, it goes here. It loads the layout file, which is nothing but loading the Vue.js as well as the bootstrap. And then we said, okay, include the content, and we have a component included. So it goes to this scroll load. So to load this component, it looks for the app.js file. There it finds the way where this file is located, which is located inside resources, JS, and components. Then it includes it, and we are including it here. Now in this file we have some content showing up, and that's the content we are getting here. So now what we need to do, we need to make this component this way so that we have the data loading on scroll. So I'm going to do it from the scratch so that you get the idea. So we have a blank component basically right now, so we don't have anything that is scrolling or loading automatically, so we're going to create it now. So let's do that. So first thing first, we need to create a few methods. So in Vue.js you can define methods, and when you say methods, inside here you can define multiple functions, and those functions you can call them methods or functions, whatever you prefer. So I'm going to create a method here, and it's going to be load more. So it's simply going to load the content. So this is the function, but we need to call it in specific time. So whenever we scroll, we touch the bottom, at that point it should work. So let's add the div, which is going to be scrolled, and then the content loads. So to do that, what we need to do here is we need to create a div, and we need to pass an ID. So in this case I'm going to call it infinite and dash list. Alright, so this is the div, and inside this div we are going to load our content, whatever content we get. Now I'm going to there's a method by default from Vue.js. It's mounted when the component gets mounted, this gets fired. So in this component I'm gonna check that when our div is scrolled and reached the bottom. So to do that, what you need to do is basically we say constant, and I'm gonna give it a name, list, and it's going to be element. Now we're gonna say document dot query selector, and we're going to pass the ID. So the ID is the ID we are using here, so that this is going to check on this particular div that when we are scrolling. So we need to select this. Now once we have this div selected, what we're going to do, I just want to use this element, so I'm going to copy and paste here. Then I'm going to say add event listener, and listen to the event. It is scroll event, and whenever you listen to a scroll event, I want to run a function. So I say function, and this is the function where we are going to define what exactly going to happen. So we want to say if list element dot scroll, and it's going to be scroll top, plus again we're going to call list element and dot client height, and if it is more than equal to the list element dot scroll height. Now this is going to check when it is touching the bottom, and it is going to fire an event. Now I added this here. This is not right. It should be here. Okay, so it is going to just check this, and whenever this touches the bottom, we want to fire our function, which is this function. So you can call a function inside this by using this dot, and then you load more. Okay, so this is going to get called, but currently we don't have anything in here. So for now, just to see if we have the data showing up, I'm going to loop through and just going to show a loop, and then we are going to replace it with the database content. So what I do, I say here for, I'm going to say let I is equal to 0 and I is less than 10, keep on running till then. So I plus plus, and then we're going to say this dot. Now we need to define a variable where we want to put the content. So I call this variable items, and I want to push some values. So and we also need another variable in this case too. So what I do here is I'm going to create these variables here. So first going to be items. Now this item is going to be whatever content we are fetching, it's going to go inside items. And we also need an increment. So for now, currently, whenever we touch, like for example, if I go to not gonna see on this one, like here, if let me make it small. Okay, so like when it touches the bottom, so each time when we are going to touch the bottom in this page, we want to catch it, want to catch that event, and we want to increase it. So we want to add an increment. So what we do here is I'm going to say increment variable, by default 0, and this increment we need to increase it. So we can say here this dot increment plus plus, and we need to increment it as well as we need to push it into the items. Maybe it is getting confusing for now, but you will be getting the understanding once you see the code working. So in a moment I'll show you again and explain you again. So we have the increments getting in the items, and it is increasing and getting in. Now on the page refresh, we need to load the content by default. So I'm going to call this function here. So it is going to be called when the page refreshes and whenever the scroll bar touches the bottom, and the both occasions you can see here. Alright, so we have the content. So we are loading this for loop. For now we are just incrementing and putting into the items. So these items we need to display on the browser. So to display on the browser, we need to go into the infinite list here, and here we need to say div, and I want to give it a class of cod. Now cod is a bootstrap class. If you want to use it, fine, otherwise you can leave it. So what we can also give it a custom class, single card, because I want to give some custom CSS to it. Now here we need to loop through those items. So here items are empty, but when we call the function, item is going to have some data from this increment. So we want to show that data. So I'm just going to say here v4, and in the Vue.js we say item index in items. Now we need to pass a key, and I'm going to give it an index. Alright, so we have this here. Now we can use this item to display the content. So what I say here, I say item number, and then simply I'm going to add the item. Alright, now let's do this now. I refresh the page and we get this. Okay, so if I scroll down, it says this load more not defined. So let me first tell you how this all came up. So if I go here you can see that on the first page refresh, it fired this function. So this function fired this. Now when it fired this, it ran a loop till 10. It increased increment each time, and it added the increment inside items. Now items, we are looping through here. So we added just the text and then the item number. So here it is doing that. Item number 1, item number 2, till 10. Not more than 10, till 10, because it is happening on refresh. But when we touches the bottom, which is defined here, we get an error of this load more is not function. So to fix this, what we can do here is we can define a self. So we say let self. You can call it even anything else if you want to, but I prefer self. I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to replace this with this, because when the code gets nested, so sometimes this is not it gets undefined, and that's why we're getting this and load is not a function. So now we in this case have self. Now in this let's check if it works or not. So I refresh. So we have this. If I scroll, you can see it increasing each time we are getting the number. Alright, guys, so we have the content just generating from that loop. Now we need to fetch the data from database. So I go to localhost phpMyAdmin, and here I'm going to create a database. So I'm just going to call this one blog, and I'm going to create it. Now here I want 3. I'm going to give the table name. Let's call it posts. So we are going to make it a kind of blog type. So here first I'm going to give it ID. You can skip this part if you're familiar with this. So it is going to be integer. So I select int here, and then the auto increment. So each time your code goes in, it automatically increases. Now the second one is going to be title, because this is something that we are going to display. Now I'm going to want it to be varchar, which is various characters. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to give it a 250 of the limit. And then the last one is going to be created underscore add. So it's going to be the time when this was added. So it is going to be a timestamp. So it's, timestamp is basically I'm going to store the time of that particular moment when this entry was entered. So created underscore add. Much better now. So we have this all good. Alright, now in our code, we need to deal with this. So first of all, we have the database here. We need some dummy content. So I go to zox.base. Here we have some text generator where we can generate some dummy text. So I'm just going to select the type. It's going to be list content, and I'm going to generate it. Now we have some dummy content. I'm going to copy from here, and I'm going to enter by clicking insert. We don't need to provide the ID. This is going to be automatically inserted. So I'm just going to paste a few titles from here. Alright, so we have some dummy content here. We can still increase it. Only I say check all, and after that I say copy. And it's going to give us it's going to copy everything whatever we had previously. You can add something in front of it to see the difference. So I say 2 and then 11. Go. Now we have 20 records. You can see all the titles are different. Now for loading the data from the database, we are going to use Axios. If you haven't used Axios, you will see the example. You can go to this page to get the download instructions. The link is in the description. So I'm going to get this npm command here, and we need to install this. So currently, and one more thing I want to add here, that whenever you create any changes into your component, so for example, we are working on scroll.view. So if I change anything, if I add a function, or I increase the count here in the loop, or I change any kind of change in this particular .view file, we need to compile it. So this compile, you can see here it says compile successfully in 40 7 milliseconds. This is happening because I ran a command npm run watch. So it's a watcher which is already checking this, and every time whenever I make the changes, it updates it. So that's why it is showing up here. So if you're not seeing any changes from your component, make sure you are compiling it. Now we need to run the Axios. So to work with Axios, I need to go into my project folder using cmd. So I'm gonna do that. Open this command. So I'm gonna paste it. It will take a moment, so we need to give it a time. Now you can see that it added the package. Now we can use this package without any problem. So what we need to do here is we need to go into the, here you can see the how we can use it. We can do a get request to this URL and we get a response. If success, if error, this guy comes here. And we also have then that always executes. We just need the success and error, so I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to put this code. Now we need to define a URL from where we're going to get the data. So I'm just going to say in this case get/posts. That's it, simply. So whatever response comes goes into console.log. So we don't have this URL set up in our route, so we need to do that. So we go into web.php. Here we have only single route working currently, which is displaying the home page. So less routes, then it's not a problem, but if you have multiple routes, you will require these comments. So I'm just going to say here fetching. All right, so we have this route that we need to copy this, and I'm going to put it here. Okay, now we need to remove this function because this is setting the view here. We want a controller which is going to be getting us the data. So I'm just going to remove this and I'm going to provide an array, and we want to give it a controller name. So I'm just going to create a controller in Laravel, creating a control line. So here I'm going to say PHP artisan make controller, and I'm going to give it the name as we are fetching posts. So I say posts controller. So that's it. Now it says created controller successfully. Now when it creates a controller, you can check your controller in app and HTTP controllers, and there is your controller. Open the file, you will see your controller there. Now we need to provide a function where we need to fetch the data. So I'm going to copy this name. Now here we need to define it. So we say the controller is posts controller. We put here it's a class and comma, and then we're going to provide the method. So right here. Now the method we have is get data. So just gonna copy this and go using here that this in front. You can even remove this, and in that case we need to import the class, and it comes on the top like that. So it is including the controller and the function. Now I'm using PHP Storm, so it just simply says import class and it included it, but it is still easy if you don't use PHP Storm, because if you see we are using post controller, and here it says app HTTP controllers and then the post controller, and if you see the directory it says app, which is here, HTTP here, controllers, and the last file. So that's what you just call on the top. So we have it. Now here, what do we say? I simply say here return 1 to 3. So we. Alright guys, so after defining this URL route, and we have this controller and this function which is getting us the results. So if you getting one click of the network XHR, if you get the posts or content showing up of yours, then it's fine. But if it is not coming, like nothing happening, so what do you need to do? You need to run because we are using Axios, you need to make sure when you run the Axios command, you run npm run dev or npm run watch afterwards, so that it updates, it recompiles all the JS. So currently here I have the one error showing up. I'm just going to refresh the page, and if everything works fine, you should get 200 status, and it should come under XHR. Now when you click on it and then you go into response, you will get the response. So this 123 is coming from the code that we have. So we said, okay, go to this URL. It really is, there is a controller and the function which is responsible for the outcome. So this function is inside post controller, and we are saying return 123. That's all. So we just don't want to do this. We want to create we want to fetch data from the database. So what do? We can either do a call to database, or we can include a model here. It's a good practice to use a model inside calling a model here, so that your controller will deal with the data and your model will deal with the database. So to do that, what we need to do, we can say here make model, and it's going to be post. Now model should be singular, so we have posts controller. Now it's in this model, we should have post controller. That's it. So just gonna hit this. It's a model created successfully. Now if I go to app, and inside app we have models, and there is post. So I open this. Now we need to get our data, which is inside the here posts. So we need to get it from here. So what I do, I check if we are getting the data straight away. So we can call this model in our controller. So what we do, we simply say I say get, and we're going to say here dollar post. So I go here, refresh. Okay, so I forgot to update the database settings. So it says unknown database laravel. So when you are going to work with the brand new application, in your application there is a file .env. So here by default we have database laravel, user root, and password empty. So in our case, in this database, we created the database blog. So we need to update that into our this file. So I'm just gonna put blog here. I have a username root and password empty, so it should be fine now. Now let's go and see if it works. All right, we get some data here. So however, its structure is currently collection, Laravel collection. We can see it by converting it to array. So I'm going to close this. There is a Laravel function which is to array. You can call it like this. Now when you call it like this, it's going to convert all the data into array. So refresh, and you get the array of 20. So we have the ID title created, all the records at once, 20 records. So it started from 0 index till the 19. All right, now we need to load this on scroll. So that's the target here. So what I do simply, first of all, we need more records. So as I check all, I'm going to copy these, and I'm going to say hit go. So it's going to be more. Now we have 40. That's better. Now if I refresh, we should have 40. All right, so let's see what happens. So if I go to code, and here we simply say return post, scroll load. Now here, if you see, when we refresh it, it simply gets the records, all of them. But we want 10 at a time. So what we can do, we can set, we already have an increment set up here, which is increasing each time when the scroll bar touches the bottom. So by default, this increment is set to 0. So we can use this increment. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove this for loop. I'm just going to comment it out. And I'm going to use this increment. I'm just going to copy this completely, and I'm going to put here, there's plus. And then we are just going to modify this URL a bit. So we are saying get posts, and we are passing the increment. So Yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. Now, as it is modified here, we are passing an ID as well, an increment as well. So we can say here in URL slash and get increment. We can call it ID, or you want to call it, let's call it page. So as a page. All right, so we have this. So laravel will understand, okay, a page value will be coming. Now here in the post, we need to pass this value here. So I'm gonna say $page. And now let's see if we are getting it. So refresh posts, and we get the error, not found. Alright guys, so npm dev watch was stuck, so I was not getting the response, but I'm getting the response now. So make sure if you're not getting it, just go into your make some change into the code. So for example, now here in my code editor and here in the cmd, now if I change the code here and save and go here, I copy this, I'm going to paste it here, and then it should recompile. It's not doing it, so I'm going to close it, open the CMD again, and I'm going to go into the folder, and then npm run dev. Oh, sorry, there is space required. That is going to recompile it, so now it should be fine. So each time if it is not going to update because we are making change into the .vue file, it's not going to work otherwise. Alright guys, so in the URL we added the self increment here. So this increment is going to pass as a page. So I'm passing it as a page here. And in post controller I'm receiving it and just delete to see if we are passing it. So if I go here and refresh the page, and here we're getting 0, so it's working. Now if in case you won't get it, or it's not giving you the status 200 or some other status, make sure to update run the npm command npm run dev or npm run watch, because we are editing the .vue file. So if it's not going to update, it's not going to reflect in there. So currently we got 0. The reason of 0 is because we have 0 by default, so we got 0. Now if you notice, this is a load more function, so when we refresh it fires by default, so we get 0. Now when we are going to scroll and hit the bottom, it is going to fire again, and this increment should increase. So let's see if it is increasing, but for that we need to enable the comment, that is for loop, and now refresh. Alright, similar problem. You can see that I made a change, but it is not reflecting here. That means we need to run the command. So npm run dev. Maybe you don't want to every time do it. Now it is reflecting. Now when I scroll down, it says 11, which is not right, because we should get 1 and 2. It says 1 1 2 2. So let's check. So I'm just gonna remove this for now, because we are incrementing here as well, so it's incrementing double, so we don't want that. So just gonna remove this. So let's see what we have here. We have $page. On refresh it's going to be 0, so we need to update our query here so that it's going to be going to fetch the data as we need. So what we need here is, I want to say, like, if I go to the database, we have this query, so I'm gonna modify it, so in the according to this table. So I say here that get the 10 records. So to get the 10, you just say take, and you need to pass the value intake, how many you want. I say 10, and each time when you get 10, I want to skip few, so I say skip, and I want to give it a variable offset, and then take. So it is going to get we need going to calculate this offset based on this page. So what I'm going to say, I'm going to copy this offset here. It's going to be is equal to, so I say $page. So I'm going to use ternary operator. So if page is equal to 0, then $offset is going to be 0. Alright, so if this condition is true, the offset is going to be 0. Else, we're going to say $page, because in that case it's going to be either 1, 2, 3. So each time we want next 10 values from database. So I say into 10. So you need to give a bit understanding here. So see how it works. So I'm saying if the page is 0 on first refresh, so we are skipping 0. So only don't skip anything, just get me the 10 records. It's going to do that, take 10, and going to return to us. Now when user scrolls, we are going to get the page number like 1, 2, because we have the increment, which is adding plus plus each time. So it is going to increase every time scroll bar touches the bottom. So first time it comes 1. So this time it is not equal to 0. This is going to go false, and it is going to come here. So if the page is 1, it is going to be 1 into 10, which is 10. So it is going to skip 10, and it is going to get us next 10 records. So next, take 10 from next. So this is how it's going to work. Now let's see if we are getting everything working as we want everything to work. So let's go there and refresh. So if console log, I have data here, 10 records. If I scroll down, and when we scroll down, we get nothing. So let me show you exactly. We have response console log, so response.data. Because if you see here, we have this object, and then we have data, and data has this array. So refresh. So similarly, now scroll down, we get 10 here, 0 here. So we need to see why is that happening. I'm going to put this increment here inside this variable, and then I'm going to check if that helps. So here I'm going to alert it each time. So what we get, we see before we get the results. So let's see. So refresh. Alright, scroll. You can see that I just added that. It didn't update. We didn't get alert because we need to run the command. I'm just gonna add watch here. Completed. Refresh. We get 0. We get 0, and we don't get that. That's perfect, because what happened is currently items are not coming. We need to put the data, and according to that data, this increment should increase. So let's do that. We have response.data, and here we were adding the increment, so we are going to push this time response data instead. Alright, now if I go here and refresh, it says this is undefined. Now this is here, so I can use self, because we are in nested function here inside the Axios. So we need it that way. Now I'm just gonna refresh. 0. We get data here. Now we want to print the title, so we need to, because this response.data, it is something like this. If you go in array, object, then we have title, ID, and created underscore add. So if you want to print the title, we need to define title there. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say item dot title, and now I'm going to say refresh. And we are not getting it. Alright, let's see what happens here. items, self.items. I'm gonna put this here in console log to see what we have, and we get an array, and then we have a 0, and then we have values, and that's why it's not doing it, because it's just stuck here. So we need to loop through it inside this particular response. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create another loop here to fix this issue. So we say for response.data length I plus plus. So in real world application, when you be working, you will be saying like you need to modify your code as the data flows. So this is something happening just that way. So you can see that we have titles coming just fine now. Now if I scroll and this touch the bottom, this time we get page 1 and we get more data. Touch here, we get page 2, and you will see we get more data, and it's the new titles. So each time you can see here we have 10, then 20, then 30. So it's going to keep on increasing, and as long as we have data, we are going to get the data. So now we don't have any more data, but we are getting this alert numbers keep on increasing because we have the increment set. So that's totally fine. That's not an issue here, because if you be having more content, it will load more content. But currently we just have the 40 posts here. So you can see that it loaded 40 posts. So we are successful created this data, which is loading through Axios, Vue.js, and Laravel 8. So I'm going to leave the code into the description. You can download the zip and use this code as you want. So I hope you like this, and do subscribe and share like our content, guys. It's very important because we are not making money through this. Our channel is not monetized or anything. I just do it for my hobby, and anything you say, any like or any comment, that means a lot. Do visit zox.biz, and hope you like our content. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.
And our goal is not in her.